Welcome to God's 4:11. Today we're going to delve into an intriguing yet overlooked book in the Bible, the Book of Maccabees. Maccabees, a book from the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, tells the gripping story of the Jewish people fighting to preserve their faith against an empire determined to destroy it. So why was a book once revered by communities and filled with heroic tales of resistance, faith, and miracles excluded from the Christian Bible? What secrets lie behind its centuries-long rejection? In this video, we'll explore the captivating history behind the Book of Maccabees, understand its significance, and reveal the reasons it was banned. Get ready for an exciting journey through the history, faith, and politics of the Bible. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming fascinating videos. If you haven't seen them, check out our other videos in this series about the banned books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. We've covered hidden gems like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and more. The links are in the description, so be sure to explore those videos as well. Now let's dive into the Books of Maccabees, a hidden chapter in biblical history where strong faith confronted oppression and led to extraordinary miracles. The Book of Maccabees, or Sefer HaMaccabim, recounts the history of the Maccabees, the leaders of the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid dynasty. The Book of Maccabees refers to a collection of deuterocanonical books included in various biblical canons. The first Maccabees, originally written in Hebrew and surviving only in its Greek translation, contains an account of the history of the Maccabees from 175 BCE to 134 BCE. 2 Maccabees, a Greek summary by Jason of Cyrene of an earlier history written in Hebrew, recounts the history of the Maccabees from 176 BCE to 161 BCE. It focuses on Judas Maccabeus and also describes prayers for the dead and offerings. 3 Maccabees, a Greek narrative, tells the story of Egyptian Jews being saved from impending martyrdom at the hands of Ptolemy IV Philopator in the 3rd century BCE. 4 Maccabees, a Greek philosophical discourse, praises the superiority of reason over passion, using the Maccabee Martyrs as examples. 5 Maccabees, an Arabic text, provides an account of the history of the Maccabees from 186 BCE to 6 CE. The same title is sometimes given to a Syriac version of the 6th book of Josephus's The Jewish War. 6 Maccabees, a Syriac poem, may share a lost origin with 4 Maccabees. 7 Maccabees, a Syriac text, contains recorded speeches of the Maccabee martyrs and their mother. 8 Maccabees in Greek is a brief account of the revolt based on Seleucid sources, preserved in the Chronicle of John Malalas, pages 206 to 207 in Dindorf. Can you believe that a single act of defiance sparked one of the greatest Jewish revolts? The first book of Maccabees not only recounts battles, it is an epic of steadfast faith under trial, as Jewish religious identity stood on the brink. The first book of Maccabees was written around 100 BCE in Hebrew, though the original no longer survives. Instead, we have a Greek translation, pre-Christian, filled with Hebrew idioms. The author, likely an anonymous Palestinian Jew, was familiar with his people's traditions and sacred writings, and had access to reliable information about their recent history, from 175 to 134 BCE. He himself may have played a role in these events in his youth. His purpose in writing was to document Israel's deliverance, achieved by God through the family of Mattathias, 562, especially his 3 sons, Judas, Jonathan, and Simon, and his grandson John Hyrcanus. The author compares their virtues and deeds to the ancient heroes of Israel, such as the Judges, Samuel, and David. In the first book of Maccabees, the author presents an objective historical account of the Jewish oppression under Antiochus IV. It addresses the rise and legitimacy of the Hasmonean dynasty, beginning with an account of the life of the Jewish priest Mattathias, a precursor to the Maccabean Revolt. The serious style of the first book of Maccabees reflects the influence of Hebrew Bible authors. The Maccabean Revolt in the 2nd century BCE is a vivid testament to the power of faith and the Jews' resilient resistance against the imposition of foreign culture. When the Seleucid Empire under King Antiochus IV Epiphanes sought to erase Judaism and replace it with Greek culture, the Jews were forced to face a dilemma: abandon their faith or endure brutal oppression. The temple in Jerusalem, their sacred center, was desecrated and turned into a place of worship for Zeus. In such circumstances, the Jewish spirit and will were tested to the highest degree, reminiscent of biblical stories, like Daniel refusing to bow to King Nebuchadnezzar's golden image in the Book of Daniel 3. The courageous act that began the Maccabean Revolt came from Mattathias, a Jewish priest in the city of Modian. When royal officials pressured him to offer sacrifices to foreign gods, Mattathias refused, and in a decisive moment, killed the official enforcing the king's decree. This act was like a fire blazing in the darkness, marking the beginning of the uprising. Mattathias's action recalls the zeal of Phinehas in the Book of Numbers 25:7-13, when he defended God's sanctity by punishing those who broke the covenant. This determination sparked a powerful resistance movement, laying the foundation for the preservation of Judaism in its darkest period. After Mattathias passed away, his son, Judah Maccabee, emerged as an outstanding leader, earning the nickname the Hammer. Under his leadership, the small band of Jewish warriors courageously fought against the powerful Seleucid army. Judah's victories were not merely military achievements, but were also seen as miracles from God. Similar to the story of Gideon in Judges 7, where his small army triumphed over superior forces through faith in God, Judah and his comrades held a deep trust in divine guidance. Let us not fear their numbers, but trust in the Lord of heaven, who is mighty to save in battle. 1 Maccabees 3:18. Judah's successive victories not only helped the Jews reclaim their land, but also inspired steadfastness in defending their faith. The story of the Maccabean Revolt is a testament to the indomitable strength of those willing to risk everything to protect their faith and identity. It serves as a reminder that in the darkest times, faith and courage can pave the way to victory and preserve a community's core values. In the second book of Maccabees, the faith of the martyrs reaches an emotional and aspirational peak as they choose to sacrifice their lives with absolute belief that God will grant them eternal life. At the heart of this tragic and noble story is the image of a brave, unnamed mother who stands amidst brutality as she watches her 7 sons sacrifice their lives one by one to uphold their faith. In the 2nd century BCE, the Seleucid king Antiochus IV prohibited worship in the temple, observance of the Sabbath and festivals, circumcision, and adherence to the Torah, with a mandate that Jews who rejected Greek customs would face death. The story of the martyrdom family begins with the arrest of 7 brothers and their mother, who were beaten in an effort to force them to eat pork. The mother, acting with the reason of a woman and the courage of a man, encouraged her sons to defy the king, and they all chose martyrdom. The family's death is the climax of a prolonged martyrdom. This story symbolizes not only unyielding faith, but also boundless courage and sacrifice for religious beliefs. This image recalls Hannah in 1 Samuel, who bravely dedicated her son Samuel to God, despite the heartbreak of separation. The mother in the 2nd book of Maccabees becomes a shining symbol of steadfast faith in sacred promises, not only for the present life, but also for eternal life. The belief in resurrection in the 2nd book of Maccabees goes beyond the brief mentions in the canonical Bible, as in Daniel 12, to become a concept with particular depth and significance. The martyrs embraced death with the faith that God would raise them again in the world to come, where eternal rewards awaited. This reflects the profound beliefs of Pharisaic Judaism, and also foreshadows future Christian theological ideas. The concept of resurrection and reward for the righteous becomes central in the New Testament, as expressed in Jesus' affirmation in Matthew 22:31-32 and in 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul emphasizes that resurrection is the foundation of Christian faith. The martyrs in 2 Maccabees paved the way for the model of early Christian martyrs, as their deaths were viewed as spiritual victories through faith in resurrection. These stories remind us that God's justice is not confined to this life, but extends into eternity, and those who are willing to endure for righteousness will be justly rewarded. 2 Maccabees also revives miraculous moments of divine intervention on the battlefield. In the Battle of Beth Zur, when the Jewish forces seemed hopeless, 5 angels on horses with golden bridles appeared amidst flashing light, protecting Judah Maccabee and his comrades. These angels shot arrows and lightning at the enemies, throwing them into disarray and paving the way for a glorious Jewish victory. 2 Maccabees 10:29-30. This supernatural scene echoes stories of angelic intervention in the Bible, such as when the servant of the prophet Elisha saw heavenly armies surrounding them in 2 Kings 6:17. These miraculous moments emphasize that God never abandons the righteous. His angelic hosts stand ready to intervene when faith is tested. Another remarkable event is Judah Maccabee's vision when the prophet Jeremiah handed him a golden sword, instructing him to carry it into battle. "Take this holy sword, a gift from God, with which you will defeat your enemies." 2 Maccabees 15:16. This sword is not merely a physical weapon, but a testament to God's promise of victory. This image is reminiscent of Joshua's encounter with the commander of the Lord's army in Joshua 5:13-15, affirming that God would always be with Israel. 2 Maccabees not only recounts the Maccabean Revolt, but also portrays a powerful story of faith, divine intervention, and hope in resurrection. The martyrs, with hearts of iron and unbreakable faith, embraced death with the assurance that they would be honored in eternity. The miraculous battles shrouded in God's presence remind us that those who stand with Him are never alone. This story not only emboldens the courage of the Jewish people, but also leaves a profound mark on Christian thought, solidifying the bond between sacrifice for faith and the undying hope of resurrection. In the 3rd book of Maccabees, the story of God's divine protection comes to life in an extraordinary way, demonstrating a power that transcends all geographical boundaries and circumstances. The 3rd book of Maccabees, written in Koine Greek, was likely composed in the 1st century BCE, during the late Ptolemaic period in Egypt or the early Roman Egypt era. Despite its title, the book is unrelated to the Maccabean Revolt against the Seleucid Empire, described in 1st Maccabees and 2nd Maccabees. Instead, it narrates the story of the Jewish oppression under Pharaoh Ptolemy, the 4th Philopator, 222-205 BCE, in Ptolemaic Egypt, decades before the Maccabean Revolt in Judea. The story aims to explain the origins of a Purim-like festival celebrated in Egypt. 3 Maccabees resembles the Book of Esther, another book describing how a king was advised to destroy the exiled Jews in his territory, but was ultimately thwarted by God. In 3rd Maccabees, King Ptolemy the 4th Philopator attempts to enter the Second Temple in Jerusalem but is prevented by divine power. Growing increasingly hateful towards the Jews, he orders the Jews of Egypt to gather in his hippodrome, intending for them to be executed by elephants. However, God protected the faithful Jews who prayed sincerely to him. As the fateful moment approached, a miracle occurred, and Ptolemy's elephants trampled his own soldiers instead. In the end, Ptolemy had to abandon his genocide plan and acknowledge the invincibility of God. He decreed that the Jews in Egypt were free to practice their faith, realizing that human power could not stand against divine will. The message from the 3rd book of Maccabees is a profound reminder that, in the darkest times, faith and sincere prayer can invoke miraculous protection from God. The Jews in Egypt triumphed not through force, but through resilience and unwavering faith. This story, though less celebrated than the feats of Judah Maccabee, still echoes the message that God stands with those who remain faithful to him, ready to deliver them through the most extraordinary means. The books of Maccabees, including 1st Maccabees, 2nd Maccabees, and 3rd Maccabees, contain powerful stories of faith, loyalty, and God's protection during times of trial. So, why were they banned? To begin addressing the question of this omission, it is important to understand the formation of the Hebrew canon. The term canon originally comes from Greek, meaning standard or measure. When referring to the canon, this term is used to denote a collection of works considered authoritative within a specific religious group. For Jews, the canon includes the books found in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. However, the books of Maccabees were not included in the canonical Bible of many Jewish and Christian traditions due to several theological and historical reasons. Here is an analysis of why these books were banned or unrecognized in certain versions of the Bible. Origin and authenticity. The books of Maccabees are not part of the official Jewish Bible, Tanakh. This is partly because they were written after the Tanakh had been compiled and closed, and they were written in Greek, not Hebrew, the traditional language of Jewish biblical texts. However, the Book of Daniel, though included in the canon, is largely written in Aramaic. Further complicating matters is the fact that scholars believe the first Book of Maccabees was originally written in Hebrew, thereby meeting the linguistic criterion for inclusion, yet it is not part of the biblical canon. Another theory to explain the omission of the first two books of Maccabees is based on the dating of these texts. If this is correct, the relatively late date of the Maccabean Revolt would have prevented its inclusion in an already established canon. It would have been considered too new for serious consideration, as it lacked a long history firmly rooted in tradition. However, this theory is significantly weakened when compared with the Book of Daniel, as Daniel was included in the canon despite the fact that most scholars date the book to a period following the Maccabean Revolt, around 165 BCE. In other words, around the time of the story told in the Book of Maccabees. Theological nature. Some theologians argue that the books of Maccabees contain historical and theological elements that don't align with Orthodox doctrines. For example, stories of miraculous intervention and divine protection, like the rebellious elephants and God's miraculous salvation in the third book of Maccabees, might be seen as lacking theological authenticity or overly focused on supernatural aspects. The second book of Maccabees contains detailed descriptions of resurrection and rewards for martyrs, which highlight concepts of life after death and faith in resurrection. While these ideas became foundational in Christianity, they did not entirely align with Jewish perspectives of that period. Political and religious reasons. Some churches may have been concerned that the stories in Maccabees, particularly the military revolts and defiance of imperial power, could incite rebellious thoughts or be misinterpreted as promoting violence for religious reasons. This could complicate the dissemination of Christianity's teachings on peace. The third book of Maccabees emphasizes God's miraculous salvation within the political context of Egypt, a detail that may not have been easily accepted in the religious and social contexts of the time, especially as the story does not directly relate to Israel's history in the Holy Land. Educational and spiritual value. Although the books of Maccabees offer lessons on loyalty, perseverance, and faith in God, they are considered more historical and literary than doctrinal. This makes these books more suited to the deuterocanonical group, or accepted in Catholic and Orthodox churches rather than in Protestant ones. In summary, the books of Maccabees were excluded from some canonical Bibles due to language, theological conflicts, and concerns over historical interpretation. However, the stories from Maccabees, whether restricted or not widely recognized, still provide profound lessons on faith, courage, and trust in God's protection in the most challenging circumstances. If you have any opinions or theories about why this book was banned, feel free to leave them in the discussion section for everyone to see. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this inspiring story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest videos. Leave a comment with your thoughts and the lessons you learned from this story. Together we can spread the message of faith and resilience. Thanks be to God for His boundless love and protection.